I hope the other guy looks worse, Maria said, tilting her head to get a better look at my face. The other guy, I said softly. Can you work? Yeah, but I probably need to avoid seeing clients for a while. She nodded, and then I saw her lips tighten. I assume there's a police report? I nodded. Any chance you'll be arrested? No, I doubt it. I wasn't the real victim, but I can't imagine anything will come of it. All right, she said softly. We'll do without that. Oh, and Tommy. I looked at her, wondering if she was going to lecture me or give me a hug. She always gave the impression of a stern old librarian, but those who knew her realized she cared deeply for others. Please learn to duck, she said, unable to contain her smile. The laughter in her eyes gave her away. So I've been told, I said, smirking. Thankfully, I managed to spend the rest of the day working. Except for some good-natured teasing from Jonas and Armand, things quickly returned to normal. A couple days later, Angie spotted me. And if Maria was hard to understand, Angie wasn't. There was a mixture of anger and guilt on her face. She was angry at me for not calling her that night in the ER, and then felt guilty when she realized it was Bill and his cronies who had set me up. It took some time, but I convinced her that it was my fault. If I hadn't hit him, maybe it wouldn't have happened. I ended up being reminded repeatedly that we are friends and friends call friends when they are in trouble. I realized she was trying to make me feel better, but every time she called us friends, I felt like she was emphasizing that that was all we would ever be. After our conversation, I focused on building my personal life. I had finally come to terms with the fact that Angie has her own personal life, and I wasn't going to be a part of it. We would only remain good friends, and I had to learn to live with that. It was hard, but I got through it. Sure, sometimes I fantasized about Angie, but I started looking for more realistic possibilities. There were several women at the gym that I was interested in, and I started going to them and talking to them more and more often. There were also women I met at work who seemed to be okay with going on dates with me. I started going on occasional dates, and a couple of them ended with me going back to my apartment. Unforgettable, I grinned to myself. Only slightly better than a one-night stand. One of the bright spots was Tara. As we continued practicing, I found it harder and harder not to stare at her. She was really trying her best, and it was noticeable. Thanks, Tommy boy, she said. Holy shit, Tara. I sighed. Did I stare again? She nodded and grinned. Tara, I'm sorry. Tommy boy, I don't mind. It's been a while since I've been stared at like that. I snorted. I doubt it. Well, she said, blushing. Yeah, but that was a long time ago when it was done by a nice guy and not some creep or horny guy. We both laughed, but for different reasons. She laughed because she was complimenting me and was happy with the situation. I laughed because I was trying to hide my annoyance. Safe. Amazing. Damn it, I was starting to hate those words. For the next 6 weeks, I tried to work as hard as Tara did. Eventually, I reached my goal of 60 pounds and Tara lost 30 pounds. It didn't look like she would get to 40 by the time I started exercising, but she was close. Since I had gained weight, I made a date with Angie. We had a friendly relationship. The only real difference was that I didn't pant after her like a dog. If she did notice, she never said anything about it. Erica turned 5, went to kindergarten, and that allowed Angie to start taking classes at St. Catherine's School. She started working on becoming a physical therapist. When I picked her up, I met Erica at the front door. Tommy Bear, she squeaked. Hi, Goldilocks. I reached out and picked her up. Are you asking Mom out on a date? Yes, that's the plan. Can I come with you too? Not this time, honey, said the older woman behind her. She was a thin, frail woman who looked to be in her mid-60s. Wearing huge bifocal glasses and with short gray hair, she looked like a grandmother. Monica Harper, she said, holding out her hand. I shook it and marveled at how tight her grip was. Tommy Swanson, I replied. I know, Mrs. Harper smiled. I've heard all about Tommy Bear in the men's room. I groaned. She laughed. It's amazing what little eyes and ears pick up. By the way, you look very nice today, Mr. Swanson, she continued, then reached out and corrected my tie. Thank you. I dressed up in a suit and tie as I took Angie to Devesto's on the square. By losing weight, I was able to wear my best clothes from college. When Angie came out of the bedroom, I almost choked. She was wearing a simple string of pearls with her version of a little black dress, but it was stunning. I had to remind myself that we were only going out as friends before I embarrassed myself by drooling. That's how the whole evening went, me reminding myself that this wasn't a real date. Angie did nothing to make me think otherwise, and I gradually relaxed, deciding it was just a normal evening with a beautiful woman. The Divesto restaurant was stunning and expensive, but that was to be expected. My beautiful date was well worth it. In the entire time we spent at the restaurant, Angie was only harassed once, and that was when she was returning from the ladies' restroom. It was a completely different story when we decided to go dancing and went to Strobe on the square. We didn't even get to sit down before she was asked to dance. It was the first of several dozen times. Surprisingly, Angie declined every one of them, even after I reminded her that we were only here tonight as friends. She reminded me that she did the same thing when we went to the 4th of July celebration. Her reasoning was simple. She was with me, and she wasn't going to make a date with anyone else. The only time I had a hard time that night was when I hugged her tightly while we danced to slow songs. Unfortunately, those slow songs were too short and were played very infrequently during the evening. The evening ended with a kiss on the cheek. "Thank you, Tommy boy," she said quietly. "It's been a long time since I've been on such a fun date. You were the perfect gentleman." Now another phrase had been added to my list of annoying labels besides cute and safe. Perfect gentleman. Soon after, I decided that I needed to get serious about finding a man I could fall in love with and spend the rest of my life with. I mentally chose a few options and vowed to myself to ask them out within the next week. As usual, fate had other ideas. The first disruption to my plans had to do with work. Setting up the network took up all of my time except for my classes with Angie and Tara. Second, even though classes at St. Catherine's started 2 weeks early, Tara had managed to gain her weight. I had the honor of setting up a date with her for the following Friday night. She asked me to pick her up at her apartment, which she shared with 2 of her friends. When I stopped by to pick up Tara, I was shocked. "Damn, girl," I said, stepping back and ostentatiously looking her over from head to toe. "It's amazing what you can accomplish with makeup, don't you think?" "I think all that stuff can certainly help, but only if you already have something to start with. And you, Tara, already have something. You're beautiful." There were lights dancing in her dark brown eyes, and her smile was dazzling. Apparently, this big, dumb animal could say the right thing once in a while. I took her out to eat and was surprised when she suggested Sherman's Wharf, a small seafood joint just off the highway. Granted, it's not a high-end restaurant, but it's a good place for freshwater fish and shellfish. I expected her to want to go to one of Brownwood's more expensive establishments, like Devesto's or Maison Le Rouge. She must have seen my surprise and laughed. "Tommy boy, I plan to dance till I drop tonight. The salad at the wharf will be just right. Besides, I can barely breathe in this thing, and if I eat anything heavy, it might explode." "You say that like it's a bad thing," I said, laughing. "If only." She chuckled, but kept looking at me with her smoky gaze. "This is your night, beautiful. Your wish is my command." "Well then, good sir," she said in a haughty voice. "Is my carriage waiting?" "After you, my lady," I said, giving a deep bow. She was right. Our citrus salads with greens and grilled shrimp were the perfect start to a night of dancing. Tara had chosen the club scene at Strobe, which was fine with me since my past experience at City Lights was still fresh in my mind. The evening got off to a great start. Tara looked really good and was attracting the attention of a few guys. When the first one approached to ask her to dance, she surprised me by looking at me and asking my permission. Of course I gave it, but then asked her about it. "Tara, thank you for asking me, but remember this is your night. If you want to dance with a guy, I certainly won't stand in your way." For a moment, she looked at me with disappointment. "Tommy boy, you are my companion for this evening, and I always leave with the one who brought me. And if I can dance with any guy I want, you need to get off your ass and come out on the dance floor with me." That set the tone for the next 2 hours. Most of the time, Tara danced with me, but occasionally danced with another guy. All in all, we were having a great time, but as with all good things, there's always a bug that tries to ruin everything. This time it was a pest from my past. I didn't notice her until I heard her voice from behind us. "Oh my God, look at you!" Her voice bellowed. "Looks like you finally pushed yourself off the buffet." I turned and saw Susie standing there, looking like a star. It was an image she knew how to create with ease. She was accompanied by 2 men. The first was a tall, well-built blonde man about my age, dressed in a several $1,000 Italian suit. He looked European and had a snotty, smug expression on his face. The other was a short man of slight build who reminded me of a middle-aged Johnny Depp trying to look like a bookworm. I recognized him as one of the Hawthorns. I'd seen him at the Strobe several times over the past year. He observed our situation with an indifferent look. "Oh dear," I replied in a mocking tone. "Looks like the herpes sores have finally healed. Did you finally get rid of all those little things, or did you just accept them as a curse for being a slut?" "Screw you," she grinned. "I already told you never again, and besides," I said in response to her chuckle, "I doubt you've turned 20. Her fair-haired companion, who had stepped toward me, was now looking at me with pure hatred. Hawthorne put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. "Easy, Hans," I hissed. "I was just enjoying my date until I was proposed to by this, lady. By the way, if you two are going out with her tonight, I'd be sure to check her medical records. I'm sure some of these things are not curable." I saw the large European man's face go pale and noticed a small smirk on the bookworm's face. "I see you've moved into the dating weight class lately," Susie teased, looking at Tara. I saw the resentment in Tara's eyes. I walked over and took her hand. It was enough to make her turn away from Susie briefly and look into my eyes. What she saw there made her smile. I turned around and smirked at Susie. "Shit, Susie." I laughed. It must hurt to realize that a woman you consider beneath you can snag a guy with just a smile. You may look good on the outside, but everyone who knows you realizes what a rotten, nasty slut you are on the inside. Your ex-husband is damn lucky he left you. "You," she began to yell, drawing the attention of several other tables. "You bloody—" "Stop it!" roared Hawthorne in a voice much deeper and stronger than I expected. "Jürgen, please take the lady back to our table," Hawthorne ordered. Jürgen glared at me, but then complied and led the furious Susie away. When they were gone, Hawthorne turned to Tara and me. "My apologies," he said. "I didn't mean to ruin your evening. I didn't understand her plans when she led us to your table. Please allow me to make it up to you." With those words, he disappeared into the crowd. A few minutes later, one of the waitresses escorted us to the VIP area, where a bottle of champagne was waiting for us. "Oh, hell yeah," Tara giggled. "Now that's more like it." For the next hour, we laughed and danced and forgot about our little run-in with Susie the slut. After leaving the club, we decided to take a leisurely stroll around the town square. The September night was warmer than usual, but it was nice to cool off after a few hours of dancing in the club. Despite the mild weather, Tara used it as an excuse to snuggle up to us. At the end of our walk, I hugged her and kissed her. She looked at me and I couldn't figure out what she was thinking. All I could see in her eyes was the faint flicker of the streetlights. However, her voice told me what I wanted to know. "Take me to your apartment," she whispered hoarsely. We barely made it into my apartment before we were immediately on the bed. Next chapter. It was over a week before I met up with Angie again. The network installation took the better part of a week and involved long, boring hours of cable work. During the class, I felt she had a lot to tell me. By the end of the training, I couldn't take it anymore. "Okay, Angie," I sighed, still trying to catch my breath. "Say what you need to say. What did you do to that girl?" she asked calmly. I knew immediately that she was talking about Tara. I had spoken to Tara several times last week. First, to thank her for a wonderful evening, and then to make sure she didn't think of me as a one-night stand. I even asked her out on a date, but told her it would have to be after my networking project was complete. She seemed to understand and was interested in going out with me again, so Angie's question made me a little nervous. "Why?" I asked anxiously. "Is she okay?" Angie snorted. "Better than okay," she said, laughing. "Tommy boy, she's just floating in the air. What exactly did you do?" "Sorry, Angie, but that's something Tara should tell you about. I'll tell her that I treated her like she was special, and she really is." "Well, you certainly made an impression." She threw me a wary look. "You realize she'll be yours if you just ask her. She thinks you're walking on water right now." I laughed. "Well, it won't be for long. She'll soon realize I have feet of clay. I don't see us living long. She's too young for me. She's got her whole life ahead of her, and she doesn't need an old guy with all that baggage dragging her down." "An old guy like you?" Angie grinned. "Well, old compared to her. I wish I was younger, though, because she's special. She has an incredible amount of beauty in her just waiting to be let out." Any guy who falls in love with her and takes the time to find her will be rewarded with a woman who will rock his world. I turned and looked at Angie as she had fallen silent. She had a strange look on her face as she looked at me. What? I asked, not understanding anything. Nothing, she replied, and gathered her things to leave. You're unusual, Tommy boy. I didn't know what to say to that. At least she didn't call me nice or safe. Next chapter. For the next month and a half, I struggled to break the 70-pound barrier, but I finally succeeded. Tara and I went on several dates and had a great time both in and out of the bedroom. Aside from the incredible feeling of waking up with a warm, soft woman by my side, we became fast friends. But even with all that, I knew we weren't going to be together. There was a spark between us, but it wasn't as strong as it was with Leah. The last time we met was a bit bittersweet and humorous. I took her to a Crusaders soccer game with me. We enjoyed ourselves and each other's company, even though we both realized that our relationship was turning from romantic to merely friendly. As we walked to our seats, I noticed Tara constantly looking over my shoulder. I followed her gaze. A short guy who looked like a weirdo was looking at us. That's Sean, Tara snorted. I'm sure he's still pissed. Well, if you wanted to show him what he's missing, you did a great job. Tara, you look great. Oh, she cooed and lowered her eyes. That's so sweet. She looked back at her ex-boyfriend and waved at him. She giggled. I'm sure that's not what he was so upset about. I could have told someone he was tiny. She looked up at me and smiled slyly. Okay, I'll admit it was probably a bunch of my girlfriends, girls from most of my classes, a few sorority girls, and probably a few thousand people on Facebook and Twitter. In some circles, I might be considered a fat slut, she continued, but I'm only a slut to the people I care about. And the fat part? Well, I'm working on that. Damn, girl, remind me not to get mad at you. Oh, please, Tommy boy. You've already seen my bad side. In fact, you've seen all my sides. Oh yeah, I said softly and smiled. Give me a break, boy, she said, laughing. I don't like public. Well, at least I don't think so. I snorted, but she interrupted my train of thought. But it would still only be entertainment, wouldn't it, Tommy boy? No, Tara, I said softly. It won't just be entertainment. I know we're partial to each other, but not enough to make a lifetime commitment, right? Tara, It's okay, Tommy boy. It really is. I know we love each other, but more as friends than lovers. I hope you know how much I care for you and how grateful I am. I hope I have shown you how much I appreciate what you have done for me. Much more than I could have hoped for, beautiful. Good, she said, looking intently into my eyes. No guy has ever treated me the way you do, like I'm some kind of special. Tara, you are special. You're going to be the center of some lucky guy's world when you find the right guy? Lie down, boy. We need to watch the game. I groaned softly and she laughed. It took a little while, but we finally settled into our seats. During the game, a bunch of her friends joined us. I suddenly felt very old. One of her friends was an interesting guy. He had multiple tattoos on each arm and on his neck. His dark hair with blue tips was slicked back and he had a piercing in his nose. All in all, he looked like a half-goth. But even despite his appearance, it was his gaze that caught my attention. It wasn't the same as Tara's ex-boyfriends, but it still gave me goosebumps. I told Tara about it after the game. We won, by the way, 24-0. Go Crusaders. Oh, it's Jeremy, Tara said, and blushed slightly. Don't let the piercings and tattoos fool you. He's a really, really nice guy. He's into music and knows a thing or two about electronics. He's already working part-time as a sound engineer at a recording studio. Tara, I said soothingly, we're no exception. I care about you, even if we stay just friends. She smiled and hugged me tightly. I think he wants to ask me out, she said, smiling. He has great taste. Her smile grew even brighter. A week later, I found out they were dating. Next chapter. In November, I had to work hard to lose the last 10 pounds. I think I worked out 4 times a week and cut back hard on my diet, but 4 days before Thanksgiving, I gained weight. Angie contacted me earlier in the week. She and Erica were going to be staying in Brownwood for Thanksgiving and wanted to know if I wanted to join them. I had already told my family that I wouldn't be able to go back to Wisconsin this year, so I happily agreed. Angie said that right after Eric left them, she started trying to start new Thanksgiving traditions with Eric. Before Thanksgiving dinner, they would somehow help those less fortunate. I loved it, and volunteered to go with them. Late Thanksgiving morning, Angie, Erica, and I were handing out turkey dinners to the homeless at the Lighthouse Mission. The mission was located in the poorest and most crime-ridden part of Brownwood, in the southwest corner of the city. This neighborhood began at the corner of State Park Road, running north and south, and Old Southtown Road, running east and west. On the corner was Candy Cane's, Brownwood's premier strip club, and a biker bar called Ice House. A block east was Southtown Projects, the main public housing in the area. The Lighthouse Mission was a couple blocks south on State Park Road. As we drove there, I noticed Angie looking at Candy Cane. I could tell she was experiencing very mixed emotions. It seemed to me that her eyes read lust and desire mixed with sadness and pain. Since it was the holidays, I left her alone. I'm ashamed to admit it, but when we first came to the mission, I was wary. I was overprotective of Angie and Erica until Angie pulled me aside and laughingly told me to relax. As I relaxed, I was amazed at how enlightened the mother and daughter around me became. I shouldn't have been surprised because beautiful women like Angie usually do it naturally, even when dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. Erica's casual demeanor won the hearts of almost everyone present, staff and guests alike. When she climbed into the lap of an older bearded man, I started to walk over until Angie touched my arm and nodded for me to just watch. I swear the smile on this old man's face as Erica laughed and giggled humbled me to the point where my heart was breaking. Tommy boy, I chided myself. You're such a spoiled, judgmental asshole. The rest of the morning went smoothly, and I got to know a few of the staff and other people who came in that day. The only notable incident occurred when I caught Erica devouring a cup of mashed potatoes and gravy. When I asked her if she was supposed to do that, she grinned as she looked at me, gravy dripping from her chin. It's okay, Tommy Bear, she giggled. They said I could have some. Besides, she whispered loudly, Mom made dinner. It'll be better that way. I suppressed a laugh, as did a few people around us. I was surprised again when we finally sat down at the table at Angie's house. Angie wasn't a bad cook. In fact, she was a very good cook. It was what we ate that explained Erica's previous comment. It wasn't what you might call a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. There was no huge turkey or mashed potatoes and gravy. There was no buttered corn, cranberry sauce from a can, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Instead, there was spicy kale salad, curried pumpkin soup, apple parsnip puree, kale and pumpkin stuffing, and herb-stuffed turkey breast. Surprisingly, everything was very tasty. What's more, some of the dishes were even better than good. Angie brightened up when I praised her. As we were cleaning up after ourselves, I noticed Angie looking at me. Thank you, she said quietly so Erica wouldn't hear. I looked at her and realized I wasn't quite sure what she was thanking me for. She smiled, realizing my dilemma. Thank you for trusting me, she continued, and not trying to stuff yourself with mashed potatoes and gravy during the mission. Yes, I know my little monster isn't crazy about healthy food. We both laughed, and I told her again about how wonderful dinner had been. Then I mentioned that I had reached my goal of 80 pounds. Okay, she said dryly. I already bought the dress. I think you won't be disappointed. I've also booked 2 tickets for us to the ball. We looked at each other in silence until she smiled at me. I felt like my world was about to shake. I spent the entire next week getting everything ready. Tickets to the Christmas ball were expensive, but that wasn't surprising. I knew this date was going to cost me a fortune. I rented a tuxedo and even a limo and tried not to worry too much. When the night of the Christmas ball came, I was as nervous as a kid going to his first ball. I knocked on the front door and Mrs. Harper answered. Mr. Swanson, she exclaimed, you look very elegant tonight. Mrs. Harper, you look as lovely as ever, I replied. Oh, shit, she said and covered her mouth with her hand, hoping Erica hadn't overheard. We both turned around and saw that Erica was busy doing something else. Looking at each other, we both giggled. Tommy Swanson, Mrs. Harper said with a shake of her head. I'd warn you not to be so obvious when you're trying to flatter Angie, but I saw her dress. She grinned mischievously. A pouting Erica walked into the room with her bottom lip sticking out. I had to hold back a laugh. Mommy has a beautiful blue dress and I don't. Hey Goldilocks, I said, dropping to my knees. Why don't you go get it at the store later? Okay, she said quietly, hugging me. But it won't be as pretty as Mommy's. Well, I'm sure we can find something close. I'm sure you'll be as beautiful as... Oh my God. I looked up and thought I had an angel in front of me. If she wanted to look like a grown-up version of a fairy tale princess, she had succeeded. She was so stunning that I just couldn't speak. The effect her appearance had on me was obvious as I stood, stunned. Angie's eyes sparkled even more and Mrs. Harper laughed. Angie, I finally managed to mutter. You look incredible. Thank you, she said, smiling widely. I hope you're not disappointed. Impossible, I said, taking her hand and leading her to the limo. The Hawthorne Hotel was fully decorated for the season. The old landmark was decorated for the Christmas ball in all its splendor. Despite the lavish decorations and the crowd of people dressed in tuxedos and beautiful ball gowns, Angie attracted an incredible amount of attention when she stepped out of the limo. Was she the most beautiful woman in the world? I thought so. And if she wasn't, she had to be in the top 3. The evening started off great as I led her out onto the dance floor of the ballroom. I saw a few people I knew, as it was one of the premier events of the year in Brownwood. I even managed to see Susie briefly. She looked gorgeous and was surrounded by several expensively dressed older men. Fortunately, I avoided her. Angie and I were sitting at our table, taking a rare break on the dance floor, when a man approached Angie from behind and asked her to dance. I'm sorry, Angie replied, still looking at me, but When she turned to her potential suitor, she froze. Daniel? She said quietly. Angela? He replied, smiling warmly. Angie's answer made me look more closely at the man. He looked good, and the tuxedo he was wearing was expensive. He looked to be in his early 30s and had the impeccable looks of a model. He was about my height and very trim. He also had a face that I recognized but could not identify. The only thing that alerted me was that he kept his eyes on Angie. I wasn't even in his field of vision. Angie took care of that right away. Daniel, this is Tommy, she said, looking at me. I couldn't read the myriad of emotions on her face. Tommy boy, Daniel said, smiling and holding out his hand to me. I've heard a lot about you. Congratulations on losing so much weight. I stood up and shook his hand. My apologies, sir. You put me at a disadvantage. I haven't heard anything about you and I don't know who you are. I noticed the flash of irritation in his eyes before he dropped the mask he was showing off to the audience. Of course, he said, and his smile returned. My name is Daniel Pickering. Mr. Pickering, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have recovered. I've heard good things about you. Only good things, I hope, he said, laughing. I had heard of Daniel J. Pickering. He was a famous lawyer from the city. He was known as a playboy and had serious political ambitions. In short, he was a shark. A very attractive and well-funded shark, but a shark nonetheless. Angela, he said, turning to Angie again, you look absolutely stunning tonight. Thank you, Dan. That's very kind of you. However, I have to decline the offer to dance. I'm here with Tommy, and my dance card is full. Sure, but you can't blame a guy for asking such a beautiful woman to dance. Tommy guy, it was nice to meet you. It was nice meeting you too, Dan, I said, not hiding my insincerity. After he left, Angie asked me if I would take her for a walk outside the ballroom. Naturally, I agreed. I offered her my hand and she took it as we left the table. We walked down to the hotel atrium in silence. I could hear her intermittent breathing as she tried to keep her composure. When we were far enough away from the others, she stopped and turned to face me. Tommy, she said quietly with tears in her eyes, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he treated you like that. She shook her head, fighting back tears. What a bastard, she hissed. That arrogant bastard, he knew I'd be here with you tonight. Your friend, I presume? I laughed, trying to calm her down. When I saw her eyes widen, I understood. Oh, I said softly. That friend? He's not usually like this, she whispered. He's usually a really nice guy, but lately he's been getting more and more possessive. Angie, I really don't need to know that, I stated calmly. I know, but I'd like you to know. Okay, I nodded. I knew Daniel before Eric ran away. Actually, I'm familiar with most of the people gathered here today, since Eric made sure we met every influential person we ran into. After Eric left, Daniel and I became friends. He helped me get my life together. Tommy, Dan and I were never exclusive partners, although sometimes I felt like we were. He is very single-minded in his political pursuits and enjoys the public's attention. I don't want that kind of life and would never subject Eric to such a media circus. Dan also likes variety in his dating. I know at least a dozen women he's dated in the last 3 years. Angie, you don't need to explain. You've been very upfront and clear that we're only going to be friends. I understand, and I'm fine with that. Your friendship with Erica has become very important to me. You are also very important to us. That's why I wanted you to know about my relationship with Dan. I'm ashamed that he treated you like that. He had no right. Then he called you Tommy Boy like he was talking to a child. I want you to know I only mentioned you twice. The first time was when we made the weight loss agreement. I felt like he should know, because with his position, rumors or something could have gotten to him. The second time was when I told him I was going to the store to get a dress, for this dress. Tommy, I never talk about you behind your back, understand? Okay, Angie, I said softly. I'm not upset, not offended, and I don't mind being called Tommy Boy. Mr. Pickering would have to do a lot worse to hurt my feelings. Angie, I'm just an average Joe dating the most beautiful woman in Brownwood. Of course people are going to look and judge. I put up with it because you made tonight special for me. Not just because of the way you look, but because you respected and honored my feelings all evening. That is something special, Miss Miles, and I am deeply grateful for it. Now, since our evening is not yet over, I would like to dance with you. Why don't we stop in the restroom outside the ballroom so you can freshen up? She smiled, reached up and kissed me on the cheek. Thank you, Tommy Boy. Thank you for being so understanding. You're welcome, Angie, I said with a low growl. Please don't tell me I'm a gentleman or a nice guy. I really don't want to be reminded of how safe I am tonight. She stared at me for a moment, then smiled. Okay, stud, she said, grinning. Let's go dance. We started walking back to the ballroom. I hoped we could get back into the spirit of the evening. Angie said she needed time to put on her makeup, so I should sit down or go back to the ballroom. I said I would wait for her right there. I saw and greeted a few acquaintances walking by while I tried desperately to wait patiently. Then I heard an unwanted voice. Wow, you've changed, said a voice behind me. You've lost a lot of weight. I slowly turned around and forced myself to smile politely. Leah, I said without emotion, you look good. It was a small lie. She was still attractive, but the elegant black dress she was wearing couldn't hide the extra weight. She had clearly gained a few more pounds. Standing next to her was the same bookworm I had met at the strobe. He was very well dressed. And I did lose weight, I continued. About 140 pounds right after my divorce. Recently, however, I've lost another 80 pounds. Was that harsh? Probably, but I didn't feel like sitting here playing the bitch. Obviously, my answer stunned Leah and her date. While I didn't feel like playing nice with her, I had nothing against him. Hello, I said, casually extending my hand. My name is Tom Swanson. I don't think we were properly introduced last time we met. Theo, he said with a small smile, clearly sizing me up. Theo Hawthorne. Well, Theo, it was nice to meet you, but I should get back to my date. What? Leah said coldly. That inflatable Barbie you danced with? Did you hire her for the evening? I stared at her for a moment, but then decided to remain silent. It seems, Mr. Swanson, Theo said, smiling, you have quite an influence on the ladies. Only on some, Mr. Hawthorne, I said, smiling back at him. But taste doesn't really matter, does it? Hey, babe, Angie's voice came from behind me. Do you miss me? More than you can imagine, I replied. I'm sorry it took so long, she said. Angie looked at Leah and glared at her before pulling away and snorting. Oh, what games women play, I thought to myself and smiled. At least this time I wasn't a mouse being played with by two cats. Angie looked at Theo and smiled politely. Hi, Theo. How's the family? We're fine, Miss Miles, Hawthorne replied, holding back a smile. Thank you for asking. I saw the surprise written all over Leah's face. Angie returned her attention to me and looked me in the eye. Her gaze traveled around me for a moment before her sweet smile turned into a sly one. I realized that I may have spoken too soon about not being a mouse. By the way, honey, she cooed, I've thought of a few more ways we can burn some extra calories tonight. So, she spoke again, shall we dance some more before we get into a more serious workout? I was confused, but thankfully I was able to nod. She took my hand and began to lead me back into the ballroom. I stopped abruptly and slowly turned to Leah. By the way, I said quietly, I saw your girlfriend, Susie the slut, in the ballroom tonight. I was a little surprised. Considering how many Beamers, Lexuses, and Benzes I saw tonight, I figured she was working in the parking lot, scoping out new customers. Theo snorted and tried to hide a smile when Leah threw him a quick glance. I turned and led Angie back to the ballroom. What a bitch, Angie hissed softly as we danced. I can't believe her. Angie, I grinned. Bitches, sluts, and harlots. Oh my god. Asshole, Angie said, snorting and laughing. Tease, I said. When the dance was over, she stepped back, giggling. You were saying? She said, grinning from ear to ear. Actually, I was thinking about something until the blood rushed to my waist. I take it you know Theo Hawthorne? Angie laughed. Tommy boy, I know a few Hawthorns. I also know a lot of Braggs and Thorpes, and needless to say, I know almost every Rutherford in the county. Eric has made an effort to meet and socialize with all the blue bloods of Brownwood. I also know several people from the Navarro and Collins families. Eric didn't go after them as much because he thought they were too provincial. You do realize that it was Priscilla Rutherford that Eric ran off with, don't you? I shook my head. I'm sorry, I didn't know who was involved. Well, I'm still on good terms with most of those families since the scandal only tarnished the Rutherford family. Wow, I said quietly. You never told me you were not only famous, but gorgeous. She snorted, then laughed. Soon we were both smirking silently at each other. The rest of the evening went great. I cuddled and danced with the girl of my dreams. I felt like Cinderella as the ball came to an end. I know I was a little depressed as we got into the limo to go back to Angie's. I was so consumed with my disappointment that the evening was coming to an end that I didn't notice that Angie had quieted down as well. When she spoke, it brought me out of my reverie. Tommy boy, what are we going to do next? Well, at first I thought I'd take you home. She laughed ringingly. Next chapter. Saturday morning, I accompanied 2 Christmas elves to Sacred Heart Hospital for the baby girl's Christmas party. The baby girl was the cutest elf ever. Her mom was dressed just like her. Oh my goodness. When we got to the pediatric ward, there were 40 or 50 people there. There weren't more than a dozen patients, the rest were relatives and hospital staff. Erica jumped up to one of the little girls and spoke to her. An orange-haired nurse approached. Angie, Bree whispered, we may have a little problem. Teddy got sick last night and couldn't make it tonight. We need to find a replacement for Santa. I usually ask my Zach to fill in for him, but he's out of town this weekend. At the very least, I'm sure one of the dads will agree to do it. That's okay, Angie said, grinning. I'm sure we can find someone else to play Santa for a couple hours. Both women turned and stared at me. The way they both smiled left no doubt that I was Mouse this time. 10 minutes later, I was Santa. It wasn't that bad. The one-size suit didn't get in the way. I even felt good when I had to use extra padding around the middle to fill it out. Then there were the kids. Damn, no child should spend Christmas in the hospital. Most would agree with that, but that's not life, is it? I spent the next hour laughing and joking with the kids, and then I made a mistake. I approached each child and asked them what they wanted for Christmas. I first approached those who were bedridden and then let those who could sit on my lap. Most of the kids were almost shouting out their Christmas wishes, while others had to whisper them in my ear. Heck, Santa shouldn't cry, but some of their wishes were tearing my heart out. I looked at Angie and saw the same tears in her eyes. All the way through, I pretended to be cheerful and even handed out a few small gifts. Then I made my grand exit. Walking into the back room, I sank into a chair, emotionally drained. Angie and Bree followed me and thanked me over and over again. Angie told me there was another girl who wanted to sit on Santa's lap. Ho, 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 girl, I said, grinning. You want to sit on Santa's lap and tell him what you want for Christmas? Of course, that would only work if you're really good, or really bad. Angie giggled. In your dreams, Santa. Both women laughed. Oh, I replied, much to their delight. Now, Angie said, smiling, I'm going to go get her. Angie? She knows it's me, doesn't she? She looked at me and smiled. No, I told her you're looking after Santa's sleigh while he's here. She opened the door, then stopped and looked at me seductively over her shoulder. By the way, Santa, she cooed, I've been a very, very good girl this year. I groaned, and Bree laughed. Moments later, Angie returned with Erica and several hospital staff members. Erica jumped into my lap and smiled. Hi, Santa, remember me? She chirped. Oh, yes, I said in my Santa voice. I've been watching you very closely. Her eyes got huge. Oh, yes, I continued. I always enjoy watching good little girls. Erica smiled, and I looked over at her mother and saw Angie and Bree laughing and rolling their eyes. Erica chatted for a couple more minutes and then got very serious. Looking at me, she asked if she could make her Christmas wish. I nodded. She crawled over to me and whispered in my ear, Santa, for Christmas, I wish I had a real daddy. I choked up as she settled back into my lap. That stupid son of a bitch, how could he abandon that precious little girl and her wonderful mom? Damn, and here I thought I could be stupid. Oh, I forgot, she said, and crawled up to me again to whisper in my ear, and a pink bicycle. Well, we'll see what Santa can do with the latter, I said, smirking. The first one will have to wait, though. Santa has to find someone special for such a good Goldilocks. She looked at me, and her eyes got big with recognition. Santa Bear, she said, giggling. Ho, 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 I said loudly, and then whispered back to her, just don't tell anyone. She squealed and laughed and then crawled down. My turn, Angie said, grinning evilly. Erica came over and took Bree's hand, and her mom came over and sat on my lap. Several hooting and cheers erupted from the audience. I swear the only thing on my mind at that moment was, damn it, I hate that patting. So, girl, what do you want for Christmas? I said loudly, trying not to get out of character, much to the audience's delight. Well, she stretched and then whispered in my ear, I have a suggestion. I don't think Mrs. Claus would agree to that, I said loudly. Our audience laughed again. Angie smiled and whispered in my ear again. You earn your £100 and I'll give you a lap dance you'll never forget. I couldn't suppress a loud groan. The audience erupted into laughter as Angie grinned triumphantly, stood up, and walked over to Bree. It's okay, Bree said with a smile. Now that Santa needs a cold shower, we need to get back to our patients. Bree looked at Angie and smiled. Teddy will be very upset that he won't be playing Santa this year, Bree said, grinning. That'll teach the old perv, Angie laughed. I got dressed and met Angie and Erica in the lobby. Boy, Santa's sleigh sure was dirty, I said loudly. It took me forever to clean them out. Leave it alone, Santa Bear, Angie said, laughing. I glanced over to Erica, and we grinned at each other. Note to self, don't trust 5-year-olds to keep secrets. As we left, I noticed a few guys looking at Angie. I smirked, and Angie noticed it. Met some new friends while you were waiting for me in the lobby, I teased. Angie snorted. I think 3 guys tried to pick me up. I almost had to yell, strange danger. As we drove back to her house, Angie calmed down. I drove them home and we had lunch together after they changed their clothes. Erica finally went to bed, and I was able to sit and talk to Angie. So, she said, relaxing on the couch, Erica asked for a pink bike? I nodded. Well, you're going to be a hero then. I already bought it on an installment plan. We both smiled. What about her other wish? Angie asked quietly. Sorry, I said, shaking my head. Santa Bear keeps some secrets. She looked at me and arched an eyebrow, then smiled. Okay, she replied softly. I won't pry. Too much. We talked for a bit longer before we both fell silent again. You know I meant what I said, she said quietly. I know. I sighed. That's the problem. Wow, I don't remember one of my lap dances being reacted to so unenthusiastically. I'm sorry, but that's definitely not you. Then what? She asked, rising and looking at me intently. Angie, please, I said, struggling with my thoughts. Tommy boy, talk to me. Don't shut me out. We're best friends. That's the problem, Angie. We're friends. I stared at her, hoping she'd leave it alone. But she didn't. So what exactly is the problem? Damn it, Angie, I said softly. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met, but you have to understand something. I can only flirt and tease you because you've made it clear that we're just friends. I accept that, but if you ever really turned on your charm, I'd be confused. It would blur the lines and I don't know how I would react. I could have easily embarrassed us both. Tommy boy, I have complete faith in you. You're a great guy and a great friend. I know I would... Stop it, Angie, I growled. Say the word safe and I swear I'll throw up all over your living room. Okay, she said with a sad smile. I kind of understand, but you need to know why I suggested such a thing to you in the first place. First of all, I wanted to give you something special that I haven't given to anyone in a very long time. I'm not a slut, but I wanted to give you something personal. I know you want me. I won't say it's not flattering because it is. Tommy boy, I'm more than an exhibitionist. And let's be honest, she said, I didn't do it to get guys' attention. What about Daniel? She leaned back in her chair and sighed. Daniel was exactly what I needed at that moment. He was perfect. He was kind and gentle. I knew he was trying to get me into bed, but he cared enough about me to keep our affairs out of sight. The fact that he was handsome and very good in bed certainly helped too. In many ways, he was like you, Tommy boy. He was safe. I knew he loved me, as much as he was capable of loving at all. I had no illusions. Daniel Pickering is a weakling. His only real love is himself and being in front of the camera. He's a real attention seeker. Since I knew who I was dealing with, I was fine with our friendship for profit. But you have to understand, Tommy boy, I never had to try to seduce him or tease him. It was no use to him. He had to always be in control or it became a power play or a game. It's not like that with you. Most of the time you let me control you. You take care of me, and more importantly, Eric. I never let Daniel anywhere near Erica. I didn't trust him that much. I also didn't want to confuse the situation. I trust you. Tommy boy, you're an honorable man. I know you're only human, but you're a good man. You don't want to hear it, but that's what makes you so special. Next to you, a girl can be herself without hiding emotions and thoughts that aren't considered appropriate. With you, a woman can be herself. This is very freeing and very desirable. Unfortunately, it also allows a woman to bring out her worst side, such as your ex-wife. Next chapter. The holidays can be an interesting time. The sight of all the lights and festivities can either be hopeful and uplifting, or it can make a person acutely aware of what is missing in their life. For me, it was an ambiguous period. I had always enjoyed the romance and promise of family when I was with Leah. The first holiday I experienced without her came at the time of my divorce. Last year, the shock passed, and I was well aware that I was divorced. It hurt to be alone, so I moved back home to Wisconsin and spent the few vacations I had with my family. This year, I decided to forego traveling and let some of my team members go away for the holidays. Armand went to visit relatives in New York, and Jonas took a week off to be with his family in the city. As a result, I was left to look after the nets we controlled and maintained. It wasn't terrible, but I was constantly thinking about Angie and Eric. Reluctantly, Angie returned to Dallas for Christmas. I could tell that because of what had happened in the past, she was still hesitant to come home. I guess I expected her to open up and tell me about it, but she didn't. I hoped she would confide in me. After all, I was her friend. Of course, I wanted more than that. The Christmas ball and our conversation after the children's Christmas party was still not out of my head, and in my dreams either. I found myself missing them. I wondered what they were doing and if they were okay. Okay, I'm not stupid. I knew I was falling in love. I was already in love with this little guy, but I was sliding down the unenviable slope of falling in love into fantasy. Besides being a romantic fool, I'm also a realist, and I knew I was the one who was going to be hurt by all of this. I knew that being her friend was the best I could hope for, but maybe friends with benefits isn't such a fantasy. I figured I could live with that since it would allow me to be an important part of their lives. Since she offered me a lap dance as motivation, I figured I didn't look too repulsive to her. Motivation, by the way, was working overtime as I was working out at least 5 times a week to keep the holiday pounds off. This made the time away from the Miles girls more bearable until I saw them on New Year's Eve. There was one surprise waiting for me during the holidays. It happened a couple days before Christmas. Leah called and asked if she could come over. I hesitated until she said she wanted to apologize for the Christmas ball and wasn't going to be late. Maybe it was the holiday spirit, or maybe I'd had some bad eggnog, but I agreed. When I opened the door, I was stunned. Leah had clearly put on makeup to show off her strengths and hide her flaws. Even with the added weight, she still looked good. My heart stirred in my heart, too. The realization that somewhere in the back of my mind I still retained old feelings for my ex-wife was disconcerting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Tommy boy," she said softly. "Our last meeting didn't go very well." "I'm sorry, you surprised me." "I know, and I'm sorry. I wanted to say something, but we didn't start talking right away." "Leah," I said calmly, We didn't end on a good note, so what made you think we'd start on one? She didn't say anything, and I walked out the door letting her inside. She smiled uncertainly, looking around the apartment. There were still a few things from our old apartment here that I hadn't had time to replace. Some things seem familiar, she said quietly. At first, I couldn't afford to replace it all, and when I could, I decided that the money would be better spent on a house or new furniture. Still dreaming of a house of your own? She asked with a note of sadness. Of course, I replied coldly. You didn't steal all my dreams. I saw the pain on her face as she pulled herself together. I'm very sorry about that, Tommy boy. More than you'll ever know. Good, Leah, I sighed. What do you want? It's the holidays, and I wanted to clear the air between us. It's been 2 years since the divorce, so clearing things up isn't that important. I'm working on moving on with my life, and well, you were moving on before we even filed for divorce. Yeah, I know. I was being a bitch then. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I also know you've already stepped aside. I heard about your run-in with Susie and the girl you were with, and of course about the beautiful blonde who was with you at the ball. So? Leah sighed. It came out wrong, but I was trying to compliment you. I wanted to say that you look very attractive, and I'm a little jealous of your date. A few snide comments came to mind, but I held my tongue. Your comments were cold. Not that I didn't deserve them, but they were cruel nonetheless. For your information, I haven't dated Susie in over a year. What? Trouble in paradise? Leah lowered her face. Yes, she said softly. You could say that. It would be more accurate to say that I finally pulled my head out of my big ass. I was again surprised I hadn't said anything. Even more shocking was the thought that Angie might have been proud of me. Before I had time to process those thoughts, Leah continued. Tommy boy, I'm so sorry. I can't put into words how much I regret letting myself be taken away from you and ruining our marriage. I know things weren't perfect, but at least you tried. And I just walked away. I was drawn into Susie's world and I followed her down that path. It took a few hard blows to bring me to my senses. Leah, I don't want to hear about your life. Okay, I couldn't help myself. It was a cheap comment, but what the hell, she deserved it. What? No. That's not what I meant. I was talking about what made me wake up and see what I had become. We're divorced. You don't have to tell me. I'm sorry, but I feel like I have to. Of all the people my selfishness has hurt, I've hurt you the most. In fact, as much as I hurt you, it was my actions that hurt me the most, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I have to tell you that you were right. Right about a lot of things. You were right that my friendship with Susie was hurting me, us, and our marriage. I wish I hadn't noticed it at the time. You didn't go in blind, Leah. You knew what was happening and where it would lead. Yes, you're right. I was walking with my eyes open. Excitement swept over me for a while, but it didn't last long. I sank deeper and deeper until everything came crashing down about 6 months after our divorce was finalized. After one horrible weekend, my fantasy world collapsed. Remember Theo Hawthorne, my date to the Christmas ball? I nodded. Susie started dating his older cousin Bryce Hawthorne. They were together at the Christmas ball. I'm sure you've seen them. She read my reaction. Yes, he's older than her by about 20 years. He also owns the Four Seasons Lodge and is very wealthy. Needless to say, Susie thinks she's found herself a sugar daddy, but this daddy just has a beastly craving for sweets. He's really into the swinger scene, and that's not a bad thing, but he's also into other, much darker scenes. In one such area, he talks Susie into entertaining a group of his friends from time to time. On one such weekend, she tried to talk me into joining her. I will always be ashamed that I once let her talk me into it. After 2 days of classes I never even dreamed of taking, I looked at myself in the mirror. What I saw disgusted me. I was devastated. Not only had I thrown my marriage away, but I had lost all my self-respect. I can't tell you how ashamed and embarrassed I felt when I started talking to my family and those of our friends who could still relate to me. They all voiced their opinions and reminded me how badly I treated you. I know it's too late, but I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to us. I'm sorry that I ruined our dreams together. You may not want to hear this, but I still care about you a lot. So what about Theo? I said, in a calmer voice than I really was. Leah smiled weakly. Theo and I started dating shortly after that weekend. I was in a terrible state and he found out about the orgy from Bryce. He stopped by my house a couple times to make sure I was okay. Even though he's 10 years older than me, he's not a sugar daddy. We dated for about a year, but nothing exclusive. Leah snorted a disgusted laugh and continued. Theo and his firm own City Lights and Strobe. It's hard to be exclusive with a man who has girls throwing themselves at him all the time. Yeah, I said. It's damn hard to have a serious relationship with a man who doesn't mind moonlighting every now and then. Leah lowered her face and it looked like she was about to cry. Don't think I don't see the irony in that, she said weakly. Right now I'm just trying to put the pieces of my life together. I know what I've done and what I've lost. Tommy boy, I'm afraid I'll always love you. I know we'll never be together again, but I want you to know that. Well, thanks for the apology. And you're right. We'll never be together again. But that shouldn't surprise you because you were the one who tried to destroy me. You threw me and my love for you away like garbage. So no, we will never be a couple again. In fact, just the thought of you and me ever being together again makes me want to puke. Besides, I said, calming myself down, I've finally started living my life and it seems to be going well. Is that the pretty blonde you were with at the ball? Angie? I grinned. No, we're just friends. Friends with benefits? I cast a glance at my ex-wife. None of your damn business. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, Tommy boy, but I could never compete with someone like her. Even Susie would be. You're wrong, I interrupted. None of you will ever be able to match Angie, and not because she's so damn gorgeous. It's because she has something none of you have. Character. She's no saint, but she would never betray the man she claims to love like that. She'd divorce his ass before she cheated on him. And yet, Leah, even before you ripped my heart out, you could compete with someone like Angie. Heck, you'd always win. Yeah, sure, Leah snorted. Leah, until I met Angie, most people would have said Susie was the most beautiful woman I'd ever known. They would have been wrong. From the moment you confessed your love to me, no one could compare to you. After we became a couple, I never once made a pass or flirted with Susie. You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. At least in my eyes, you were. But you, I growled. You were always more worried about what other people thought than you were about the guy who would love and marry you. You let some whore tell you that our love wasn't worth fighting for, that it was your right to date on the side. No matter what bullshit she or anyone else put in your head, at the end of the day, you're the one who gave up on us. It was you and your supposed love for me that wasn't strong enough to keep you from lying and cheating on me. It's the same love that made you give up and go looking for some stranger, never fighting for our marriage. It was your love that didn't protect us, that didn't protect me. So you're saying you still love me doesn't mean a damn thing, I said, trying to calm down and control my breathing. I can do without your love. I know, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I guess I'm sorry, I continued, but I'm not quite sure what you were expecting or hoping for from this visit. I would wish you a good life, but that would be a lie. My Christmas wish is to hope that I never think of you again. Fortunately, I am succeeding. As for Susie, I hope that nasty bitch disappears from some other horrible disease. Leah stood up and walked quietly to the door. She opened it and stopped. Although she wasn't facing me, I could see her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Tommy boy. I know it doesn't mean much right now, but I'm so sorry. I hope you find someone to love you the way you once loved me. I wanted to say something, but the only thing that came to mind was Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and they seemed rather hypocritical. I watched in silence as my ex-wife walked away. Maybe it was my behavior with Leah that was to blame, or maybe I really missed Angie and Erica, but I ended up going back to Sacred Heart for Christmas in a Santa suit. With all of these rambling emotions bubbling in my head, I needed a dose of reality, and I got it. There's something about being around other people who are having a hard time, and it helps put your own problems in perspective. Seeing what these kids and their families are going through made my problem seem insignificant. That's not to say that the frustration, bitterness, and pain associated with my divorce wasn't important, just that it was in perspective. It wasn't as overwhelming. My feelings for Angie and Eric were also open. If I didn't have the relationship with them that I wanted, it wouldn't have devastated me. It would be disappointing and painful, but I would get over it. Watching a little girl waiting for a kidney transplant or looking into the eyes of a father whose child has cancer will do that to you. It's such a peace. On New Year's Eve, I welcomed Angie and Erica back to Brownwood. Unfortunately, my peace of mind only lasted until midnight. Angie returned from Dallas tense and upset, but as the night progressed, she began to relax. We gathered at Mrs. Harper's house, located on the next block from Angie's house. There were several people here that Angie considered not only friends but neighbors as well. Surprisingly, there was no one from the gym. Angie seemed to keep her personal and professional lives very separate. I was surprised that Erica was still awake as midnight fell, until Angie told me Erica's secret. She said that Erica wished she could sleep longer so she could celebrate New Year's Eve with me. As we started the countdown, Erica wouldn't let me out of her arms. At midnight, we all shouted together, "Happy New Year!" Erica leaned over and kissed her mom and then kissed me on the cheek. "Now you have to kiss me," she said, giggling. I kissed her forehead with a swoop and she squealed, "Now you have to kiss Mommy." "I don't know, Goldilocks," I said, laughing. "You never know what might happen if a princess kisses an ogre." "Tommy Bear, that only happens to frogs," she squeaked. "But it never happens. My friend Molly's mom says she kissed a whole bunch of frogs, but all she got were warts." I almost choked with laughter. Angie was the first to laugh, followed by Mama Bear. "Maybe we shouldn't hang out with Molly's mommy for a while," Angie said sternly. "Okay, Mommy," Mama Bear replied. Next chapter. Like most people, I rushed to the gym right after the holidays. While most were trying to rid themselves of guilt and get in better shape, my motives were less noble. That kiss on New Year's Eve made me focus on losing the last 12 pounds. It also got my fantasies running full throttle. I had one false start in January. I told Angie that I had reached my goal weight. She immediately informed me that losing weight without water doesn't count. Holy crap. Valentine's Day came and I asked the Miles girls out when things finally settled down. We went to the wharf. Since Valentine's Day fell on a Saturday, I was lucky enough to get a reservation in time. We had a nice evening. I asked Erica to be my Valentine, and her response was typical Erica. She giggled. "Tommy Bear, you're silly. I'm already your Valentine." There really wasn't much to say to that, was there? After I drove them home, I cornered Angie before leaving and smiled. "I put on weight 2 days ago," I said, grinning. "About damn time." She hissed and laughed. "I'll see you tonight. I'll come over after Erica goes to bed and Mrs. Harper can come over to see me." I stared at her in surprise. "Mrs. Harper has been on duty at my place for the past 2 weeks," she said, smirking. After wishing each other good night, I seemed to hang in anticipation the whole way to my apartment. The next 90 minutes seemed like at least 3 hours to me. Finally, I heard a knock on the door. My fantasy has arrived. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next videos.